So, you can't talk while yak music is playing? Do they have a SoundCloud? Because I could use that music around here. Today we're going into the third roundup for Season 7, and with this being the last batch of episodes before the mid-season hiatus, we've only got 3 episodes for this video, so let's get started. Episode 9. This has been an interesting episode. When I watched Honest Apple, I really enjoyed it. Even when I re-watched it, I still found myself having a good time, so when I saw how many people didn't like the episode, I was a bit confused, until I noticed a familiar phrase being thrown around. Character assassination. Character assassination is another one of those buzzword phrases like Mary Sue or overpowered. It's generally used by fans when a character in fiction acts way outside of their established character traits to the point where they aren't recognizable as themselves. Now, aside from the fact that this isn't what the term actually means, when I saw how it was applied to this episode, or more specifically, Applejack, I was, again, confused. And I say confused because I was stuck wondering one thing. At what point did we all suddenly forget who Applejack was? When I read the synopsis for this episode, not only was I looking forward to AJ being portrayed this way, I expected it. Because this is the type of character that she's always been. One of AJ's main character traits is that she's honest, but to a fault. We can see this as early as Look Before You Sleep. While honesty is AJ's greatest strength, there are times where it can be her greatest weakness, because there have been many an occasion where she isn't tactful about her honesty. However, in the cases that we do see this, it was only used in bit parts or as a symptom of a bigger issue, and I've been wanting to see an episode where this aspect of AJ is brought to the forefront. Honest Apple is, if memory serves, the first episode to finally do that. And I feel that because it's taken so long for us to get an episode like this, people mistakenly call it character assassination or bad writing when it is neither of those things. On top of her occasional lack of tact, AJ also has a bad habit of imposing her views on people and being somewhat forceful about it, as we have seen in episodes like Apple Family Reunion, Bats, Pinky Apple Pie, Heartbreakers, and again, Look Before You Sleep. Here's the thing about AJ. When she thinks she is doing something for the betterment of someone else, or when she thinks she's right, it becomes extremely difficult to change her mind, and it takes characters like her family and Rarity who know how to get to her to snap her out of it. Again, this is nothing new. We're not dealing with a character like Rainbow Dash, who is constantly called out on how she acts, even in cases where she was right, or Fluttershy, who was practically coddled for 80 or so episodes. We're dealing with a character that's gone over 6 seasons being bluntly honest, and in some cases prideful, without having any pony check her for it, except for the rare occasion where she is flat out wrong. And this is the result of that.
But wouldn't that negative aspect of hers gone away by now?
No, Kevin, because that's not how character traits work. You can learn how to manage the negative aspects of your personality, but they can never truly go away. They will always be there, and there's always the possibility of those traits coming out again, even in situations where you're absolutely sure that you can control yourself. Some characters just have a better handle on it than others.
So, does that mean it was Rarity's fault for making an unwise decision to have Applejack be a judge?
How is giving someone the basic expectation to not be a bitch an unwise decision? If you ask me, this is one of the best portrayals of AJ that we've gotten, because we're finally seeing an aspect of her that was used for bit parts being brought to the spotlight, and it's taught her a lesson that's been long overdue. Episode 10. Every now and then there's an episode like this. An episode that you really like, but you have to question why you like it beyond the fact that it simply appeals to you as a fan of whatever that episode is about. On a casual level, liking something on that basis alone is perfectly fine, but because the purpose of these videos is to look at these episodes on a critical level, that's simply not enough. I have to be more discerning, which is why episodes like A Royal Problem present the biggest challenge when it comes to critique. A Royal Problem is an enjoyable episode, if you're interested in Celestia and Luna. That's its greatest strength. For the folks that are, there's a lot of entertainment to be found here, especially from seeing more detail into what the princesses do. Wait, so Celestia could do something as simple as not smile in a picture and the public will easily over-exaggerate it and make it look like she's more malicious than she is? Well, that's not at all reminiscent of any reactions I've seen in real life. If you didn't have that much interest in Celestia and Luna prior to this episode though, This isn't gonna do much to change that. Daybreaker had the potential to be a great representation of Celestia's fears about herself, but despite being fine as all hell, she isn't that representation, because she came from someone else's nightmare, someone that barely knew her. Therefore, there is very little to be said about what Daybreaker means to Celestia because she didn't originate from Celestia in the first place. Even if she came from Twilight, who would have been a much better fit than Starlight in the role she was given, it wouldn't help much because the fears are not Celestia's. There is no denying the appeal of a royal problem, and its fan service never reaches the level where it sacrifices a coherent story for the sake of in-jokes, but there's a difference between an episode that's meant to appeal to the people that already love the characters involved, and an episode that portrays said characters in a more nuanced way. The existence of the former is not the problem. What is a problem is when the former is treated as though it is the latter. The latter are the kinds of episodes that can potentially change how someone feels about the featured character, and a royal problem is a far cry from that. Episodes like this are why I'm grateful that I switched to the monthly roundup format back in season 6. It gives me the time to examine and develop my own opinions in a way that I wouldn't have been able to if I just reviewed the episodes as they came out. While a royal problem is still an episode I enjoyed, I can't treat it as though it's something that it isn't. And my main concern is that the writers will see how quickly we ate this up after being deprived for so long, and they'll stick with only giving us a taste of what they can do with the sisters instead of going further. Episode 11. So, after 2 episodes with a lot to unpack, we end off with an episode that's a lot more straightforward. Pinkie Pie's last outing with the Yaks was the first episode of hers that I actually liked, so I was interested to see what not asking for trouble would bring to the table. What stood out to me about the episode is how it took an aspect of Pinkie that's usually a negative and applies it to a situation where it's actually useful. Prince Rutherford clearly didn't know what he was doing, and you can tell that even he was aware of this. But he was too full of himself to admit that he couldn't solve this problem on his own. And what makes Pinkie the best character to help fix this is that she never listens when she's told no. And that worked out for the better in this case. Under normal circumstances, this would be annoying, but in this context, this kind of adamancy is needed. Rutherford was stubbornly and knowingly putting the lives of his own people at risk. And whereas most others would let the Yaks fall victim to their leader's stupidity, Pinkie took it upon herself to make sure they didn't, die. And this is a solid episode because of that. Nothing outstanding, but definitely worth the time. It's nice to see that the ponies are willing to give others the help that they need in order to survive and thrive. Now, if only they did that for their own kind. And that brings the June roundup to a close. Compared to previous months, this was a lukewarm roundup overall, but it did give us at least one episode that I could consider a favorite. And now we have time to explore other topics during the mid-season hiatus. So what did you think of the June episodes? Swarm that comment section below or bug me on social media, and consider supporting me through Patreon or PayPal art commissions. Until next time, keep it sketchy, folks.